Okay, hello again. In this part, when they are having dinner and Gulliver is walking on the dinner table of the family, in the midst of dinner, my mistress's favorite cat leaped into her lap. So you know how much cats are interested in tiny little moving objects. I heard a noise behind me like that of a dozen stocking weavers at work. So you know that the cats purr, purr, purr all the time, and that sound that the cat makes is like the sound of a very big machine, very big factory machine. And turning my head, I found it proceeded from the purring of this animal, who seemed to be 3 times larger than an ox. So you know the size of a cat. This cat has got the size of she is 3 times bigger than an ox. So a cat and an ox. An ox is almost this high, this big. Okay, but then 3 times bigger than an ox is a cat. No, it's huge. So it's very scary. As I computed by the weave of her head, one of her paws while her mistress was feeding and stroking her. The fierceness of this creature's countenance altogether discomposed me, though I stood at the farther end of the table, about 50 feet off, although my mistress held her fast, for fear she might give a spring and seize me in her talons. So a cat is a scary thing, of course. So what they do is they take Gulliver up to a bedroom and they put him on a bed. But he's trying to sleep. But this is on the next page, page 95 in my edition, in the middle of a paragraph. While I was under these circumstances, 2 rats crept up the curtains. Another scary thing. Rats come to his bed. So if the cat is 3 times larger than an ox, imagine how big is a rat. Ran smelling backwards and forwards on the bed. One of them came up almost to my face, whereupon I rose in a fright, drew out my hanger to defend myself. These horrible animals had the boldness to attack me on both sides. One of them held his 4 feet at my collar, so the rats are the same size as Gulliver. And they are fighting against him, attacking him, and he's fighting to defend himself. But I had the good fortune to rip up his belly before he could do me any mischief. He fell down at my feet, and the other, seeing the fate of his comrade, made his escape, but not without one good wound on the back, which I gave him as he fled, and made the blood run trickling from him. After this exploit, I walked gently to and fro on the bed, recovered my breath and loss of spirits. These creatures were of the size of a large mastiff, but infinitely more nimble and fierce, so that if I had taken off my belt before I went to sleep, I must have infallibly been torn to pieces and devoured. I measured the tail of the dead rat, found it to be 2 yards long, wanting an inch, and it went against my stomach to drag the carcass of the bed, where it lay still bleeding. I observed it had yet some life, but with a strong slash across the neck, I thoroughly dispatched it. So imagine the length of the rat's tail, 2 meters long. All right. In the second chapter, my mistress had a daughter of 9 years old, a child of forward parts for her body, for her age, very dexterous at her needle, very skillful in dressing her baby. Her mother and she contrived to fit up the baby's cradle for me against night. So, the cradles, she has a baby doll, and the dolls have, toy cradles, toy bed. So she prepares that bed for Gulliver, a small bed, and it's a suitable place for Gulliver to sleep, right? The cradle was put into a small drawer of a cabinet, and the drawer placed upon a hanging shelf for fear of the rats. This was my bed all the time I stayed with those people, though made more convenient by degrees, as I began to learn their language, as usual. Again, he is learning the language of this land and language of these people. Make my wants know. This young girl was so handy, and after I had once or twice pulled off my clothes before her, she was able to dress and undress me, though I never gave her that trouble when she would let me do either myself. She made me 7 shirts, some other linen, as of fine cloth as could be got, which indeed was coarser than sackcloth. These she constantly washed for me with her own hands. She was likewise my school mistress to teach me the language. When I pointed to anything, she told me the name of it in her own tongue, so that in a few days I was able to call her for whatever I had a mind to. She was very good-natured, not above 40 foot high, being little for her age. She gave me the name of Grildrik, which the family took up, and afterwards the whole kingdom. Again, a reversal of the redefinition. He is given a new name instead of he giving names to the people. He is given a name. In Lilliput, he was given a name, the Man Mountain. Here, Grildrik, which means nanunculus or mannequin, a tiny model. I called her my Glandalklitch or little nurse, and I should be guilty of great ingratitude if I omitted this honorable mention of her care and affection towards me, which I heartily wish it lay in my power, or required as she deserves, instead of being the innocent but unhappy instrument of her disgrace, as I have too much reason to fear. It now began to be known and talked of in the neighborhood that my master had found a strange animal in the field, about the bigness of a splachnock, but exactly shaped in every part like a human creature, which it likewise imitated in all its actions. So everybody in the village, his farmer neighbors, heard about the fact that their neighbor has found something small in the field, which is very much like a full human being, but they don't understand. So everybody visits the house to see this strange creature. Another farmer who lived hard by and was a particular friend of my master came on a visit on purpose to inquire into the truth of this story. I was immediately produced and placed upon a table, where I walked as I was commanded, drew my hanger, put it up again, made my reverence to my master's guest, asked him in his own language how he did, and told him he was welcome, just as my little nurse had instructed me. So the little girl teaches him the language, and when there are guests visiting to see what kind of a thing Gulliver is, he speaks them in their own language. He welcomes them. How do you do, sir? Welcome, sir. Okay, this man, who was old and dim-sighted, put on his spectacles to behold me better, at which I could not forbear laughing very heartily, for his eyes appeared like the full moon shining into a chamber at 2 windows. So he's so tiny, so the man cannot see properly, so he puts on his spectacles to see him clearly. Okay. The next paragraph. My master, pursuant to the advice of his friend, carried me in a box the next market day to the neighboring town, took along with him his little daughter, my nurse, upon a pillion behind him. The box was closed on every side, with a little door for me to go in and out, and few gimlet holes to let in air. So the farmer friend advises the master to take Gulliver to make shows in different marketplaces and in different towns and villages. So the little girl and farmer's daughter, the little girl and the farmer, put him in a tiny box, and the little girl makes some small holes, small windows on the box to enable Gulliver to breathe, and a door for him to get in and out. And they travel to the next village, to the marketplace. The girl had been so careful to put the quilt of a baby's bed into it for me to lie down on. However, I was terribly shaken and discomposed in this journey, though it were but of half an hour. For the horse went about 40 foot at every step, trotted so high that the agitation was equal to the rising and falling of a ship in a great storm, but much more frequent. So as they are journeying in the horse-hidden carriage, as the horse runs, they jump on the road. The cart behind the horse jumps on the road, so he feels like having a sea voyage in a stormy weather. And when they arrive at an inn, a pub, I was placed upon a table in the largest room of the inn, which might be near 300 foot square. My little nurse stood on a low stool close to the table and take care of me and direct what I should do. My master, to avoid a crowd, would suffer only 30 people at a time to see me. I walked about on the table as the girl commanded. She asked me questions as far as she knew my understanding of the language reached, and I answered them as loud as I could. I turned about several times to the company, paid my humble respects, said they were welcome, used some other speeches I had been taught. I took up a thimble filled with liquor, which Glumdalclitch had given me for a cup, and drank their health. I drew out my hanger and flourished with it after the manner of fencers in England. My nurse gave me a part of a straw, which I exercised as a pike, having learnt the art in my youth. I was that day shown to 12 sets of company, as often forced to go over again with the same fopperies, till I was half dead with weariness and vexation. So he makes shows, actually. He is put on a table, he greets people, he speaks to them, and he takes out his anger and makes a show as if he was a fencer in England. And people are very surprised seeing a very tiny man dancing for them, speaking, singing for them. On the next page, I skip the next paragraph. My master, finding how profitable I was likely to be, resolved me carry to the most considerable cities of the kingdom. Now the master takes Gulliver not only to the small villages but to bigger villages, because he realizes that he can make lots of money by showing off Gulliver. Having therefore provided himself with all things necessary for a long journey, settled his affairs at home, he took leave of his wife, and upon the 17th of August 1703, about 2 months after my arrival, we set out for the metropolis, situated near the middle of that empire, and about 3,000 miles distance from our house. My master made his daughter Glumdalclitch ride behind him. She carried me on her lap in a box tied about her waist. The girl had lined it on all sides with the softest cloth she could get, well quilted underneath, furnished it with her baby's bed, provided me with linen and other necessaries, and made everything as convenient as she could. We had no other company but the boy of the house, who rode after us with the luggage. Of course, he's been very, very tired because of this heavy work, journeying from one part of the country to another. My master's design was to show me in all the towns by the way, to step out of the road for 50 or 100 miles to any village or person of quality's house where he might expect custom. We made easy journeys of not above 7 or 8 scores miles a day. for Glendalclitch on purpose to spare me, complained she was tired with the trotting of the horse. She often took me out of my box at my own desire to give me air and show me the country, but always held me fast by a leading string. We passed over 5 or 6 rivers, many degrees broader and deeper than the Nile or the Gange. There was hardly a rivulet so small as the Thames at London Bridge. We were 10 weeks in our journey, and as I was shown in 18 large towns besides many villages and private families. On the 26th day of October, we arrived at the metropolis, called in their language Lorbralgrad, or Pride of the Universe. So their metropolis, probably the capital, is called Lorbralgrad, which means Pride of the Universe. So they are so proud of themselves. My master took a lodging in the principal street of the city, not far from the royal palace, put out bills in the usual form, containing an exact description of my person and parts. He hired a large room between 300 and 400 foot wide. He provided a table 60 foot in diameter upon which I was to act my part, and palisadoed it round 3 foot from the edge, as many high, to prevent my falling over. I was shown 10 times a day, to the wonder and satisfaction of all people. I could now speak the language tolerably well and perfectly understood every word that was spoken to me. Besides, I had learned their alphabet and could make a shift to explain a sentence here and there, for Glendalclitch had been my instructor while we were at home. At leisure hours during our journey, she carried a little book. It was a common treatise for the use of young girls, giving a short account of their religion. Out of this, she taught me my letters and interpreted the words. Okay. An interesting fact here is that Gulliver is used like a slave. This is another criticism that he directs against the British Empire, because when you have other people from the other parts of the world, they are strange and people want to see them and they are to be afraid of and they are to be shown to the other people to make shows. So coming from Lilliput, where he was a giant, and turning into a tiny person here, he understands that in both ways there is a concept of power. In both ways, when he was bigger, the size had some advantages, and here, when he is a very small person, this also has some advantages as well as disadvantages it brings with him. And being small has a certain power as well, because he can be unseen very quickly, and he can go into the places where other people cannot go, and he can hear what people talk about everywhere. So these are the facts shown by Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift, being a very great satirist, was actually Irish, and he had always criticisms against the system, against the British Empire, against the way British Empire treated the Irish people. In the first part of the book, Lilliput was the symbol of England and Blefuscu was the symbol of Ireland. Ireland was always considered as a white colony, and they were constantly at war with one another. And Gulliver, as a part of the British power, British imperialist military power, he was sent to Blefuscu for military purposes to win the war against them. But here now, Gulliver, still being symbolically an Irishman, still being a part of a colony coming from an overseas country, he is used for the profit of the dominant people in this country. Okay, So tomorrow I'm going to continue with the next chapter. See you.